Well, good morning from Dubai. It's a great privilege to be joining, especially in this sort of exciting technology link-up and being connected to people all around the world. So thanks very much for the invite, Chantel. A bit about me, South African, born and bred in Cape Town. Went to school there, university there, and really learned most of my customer experience, initial grounding there. I worked in Johannesburg for the Rennies Group for a long time, where I was involved with sort of business development and new international development, before joining the airline industry in Dubai and a very exciting brand called Emirates, who at that stage, some 15 years ago, were really small and not really well known, and been involved really with marketing, segmentation, sales, global expansion, and more recently with customer experience. So for the last 9 years, I've really been a customer experience practitioner, working globally with companies, specifically Emirates, but with other companies around the world too, on bringing best practice to life.
Fantastic. Craig, so I mean, the theme around our CX Day here in South Africa, it's the first time that we're part of this amazing global event, and the theme is really around how we think customer expectations are going to change in the next 5 years. So, I mean, we'd love to hear your views on that.
Well, how many hours do you have? No, this is, I think it's a very interesting time because so many things are converging, melting, silos are being broken down. So maybe if I could structure this by responding in two ways. One is in what are sort of macro trends I see, and I think how those will affect business. And then perhaps doing a little bit of a quick dive into some of the micros. And I've got five of each just to keep things sort of balanced. I think the first thing that I think is going to start to happen over the next 5 years is that we're going to gravitate toward sharing economy. So if you think what's happened with people like Uber and Airbnb, it's people saying, I've got some assets, I want to utilize these assets in a different way, and I don't mind sharing those assets because I know that collectively we can do a hell of a lot more than what we can do on our own. So I think the first real macro trend for me is how are we going to tap into the sharing economy? How are we going to tap into Uber is now the world's largest transport company, and they own no assets. Airbnb is starting to become a real threat to some of the hotel chains because they're offering diverse instances, and it's individuals personalizing things. So really think about what this means in a sharing economy where people are far more willing to share their assets for mutual gain. So that's the first sort of macro trend I see of something that's going to be changing over time. The second thing I see, and this is looking at a whole lot of millennials that I've been working with, people a hell of a lot younger than me who think very differently to me, and I'm learning so much from them, just in terms of how values-driven they are. So I think the next macro trend is how are we going to really tap into a values-driven economy where how you produce something, how you deliver something has to also be ethically okay. It also has to be non-exploitive. It has to be valuable and valued. And I think consumers and the people who deliver to consumers are both becoming values-driven. So we need to really think as a macro thing, how are we going to be very clear about who we are as brands? How are our values going to be really articulated well? And more importantly, how are we going to behave those values so that we're authentic in front of our customers and to each other? Because it's much about us being authentic to each other as it is with our customers. The third macro trend I really see coming up is really what I'm calling the rise of the globalista. These are global citizens. You might be based in Joburg, but you're just as linked in music to the guys in Brazil, or in terms of your PlayStation to the guys in Japan, and you're probably playing with them. So our world has become a hell of a lot smaller and really exciting because it's a real melting pot. So, the Rainbow Nation is way ahead in the sense that we've had that for a long time. How do we tap into that? How do we tap into what multicultural consumerism is all about?
Yeah.
Because today you can buy anywhere in the world. And I think in an African context, what I still become really excited about, and I spend a lot of time around the world telling people about, is this incredible opportunity we have of taking first and third world things and blending them together. So we take first world technologies and put them into a third world context, and you create real magic that most of Europe and the States has never seen. And that gives us a great competitive edge, especially in Africa and Southern Africa, as to how we can tap into this multicultural consumerism. Think much bigger than your own space. Think global. Think about how that is. The fourth key macro trend I see is that consumption is becoming experience-based. You want to shop and do stuff where you feel good, where you have great experiences, and more importantly, where people excite you by doing something slightly different to what you're expecting every now and again. So whilst we want to drive consistency in delivery, we also want to have real people exciting us about different things. So if you think of, just from my background, if you think of what emerging markets are going to be doing for the travel industry in the next 5 years, where huge groups of people who are becoming affluent middle class are now starting to discover the world. China, some cities there with 20 million people, not even with one international airport yet. So think of what this is going to mean in terms of the experiences people want globally that are authentic. It's not about having the same branch of the same store in every country around the world, looking the same, feeling the same. People want to base and buy on the basis of the experiences they're going to have. Absolutely. So another little prediction I'm making is that I think authentic craftsmanship, the guys that do fantastically the woodwork and create stuff, that's going to make a big comeback because people can now access that stuff anywhere in the world and they want to have authentic differentiation. And the fifth major trend I see is that there's going to be a search for value. You're going to have to be really, really clear about what value looks like. You already know that you won't pay 3,000 Rand for a pair of jeans when you can get a pair of jeans for maybe 1,000 Rand that feel great, look great, etc. Because you have a figure in your mind of what value looks like. So I think the search for value is really important. It's not going to be about price. Definitely not going to be about price. Price will be a factor.
Yeah.
But I think customer experience really offers us a way to have an integrated end-to-end approach where customers can see more value when things are joined up than when they're all siloed and bitty. And when they do that, they're prepared to pay slightly more for them.
Absolutely.
So the search sorry.
And I think that last point of yours around value is very much around emotional value added to the typical criteria that we apply to getting value from a product or a service.
Absolutely. It's all about how you feel. So the search for value is as much about how you're getting an integrated thing, but it's how valued you feel in doing business with that organization. And so I think those are 5 really, really major trends that I certainly think in the next 5 years are going to be dialed up hugely in the way in which we go forward. And I think just then very quickly on the macro trends, the things that I'm starting to see that I think will influence the way we think and do stuff. Everyday services are becoming digitized everywhere. I mean, in Dubai, I'm now ordering food from apps from 5 restaurants at the same time. That's probably why I look like I do. Supermarket deliveries are being done like that. I pay for my parking through an app on my phone that just buys me additional time on my parking. So I think everything is going to become digitized. There's a caveat to that though, is that digitized will make it easier for us to do stuff, but it's still going to be high touch. I'll get to that in a bit more detail later. I think the second micro trend I'm seeing is that visual communication is going to be the best way to communicate. And this is a really important thing for people running call centers, for having any form of support, is that with our average attention span being 5 seconds, which, by the way, is less than a goldfish now, because a goldfish is 9 seconds. Our attention span is less than 5 seconds. We're going to have to be really, really, excuse the language, shit hot at communicating visually.
Absolutely.
We've already seen email is almost defunct, especially with millennials and younger generation. They don't even know what email. It's a bit like us growing up with a telex or a fax machine. You know, that's going to be defunct. And I think because we're so good at using things like Google Hangouts, like Skype, etc., we can't understand that companies haven't adopted that FaceTime, you know, demanding FaceTime yet. So really understand if you can do something in that space, have a person talking to a person and making eye contact, you're going to be making a hell of a more inroads to where you need to go. I think B2B services, i.e. how we do business inside businesses, that's going to become amplified in consumer rights too. I think the fact that mobile payments is going to change the way in which we do everything. You know, and I think in SA it's quite a nice thing, so you just got to really look after your mobile phone. But otherwise, you don't need to worry about your wallet in your bag. And then I think the final one, which to me is quite an important one, is really there's going to be a renewed focus, I think, see, the more integrated everything becomes, the more we're going to want to stick out as individuals, and the more we want any of our interactions with anybody to be private. So even though we're very digitized and very out there, privacy, I think, is going to become really important to us. Sorry, that was a bit of a tirade, but 5 key micro and 5 key macro that I think is going to be really important.
No, absolutely. That's great. Thanks, Craig. So, I mean, the next question I have is really around how do you think, I mean, at the moment we kind of play off customer satisfaction versus customer delight. We kind of play them off against each other. You know, how do you think that's going to shift in future? I think the struggle we have around services in South Africa is people are barely satisfied. I think we're still making so many mistakes when it comes to the basics. Very often our customers say to us, you know, it's just not achievable. How do you design delight when you're missing so many of the basics?
Well, it's a very good question. You know, do we really need to go out to delight customers all the time? I don't know about that. I think what we've got to really do is we've got to get the absolute basics right every single time as a non-negotiable, because we become so satisfied with so little. Drop the standards of customer service, of the way in which companies do business, to the lowest common denominator. And I think the example I can throw in is when somebody says they're going to call you back, you actually make a note of it, because you 10 times out of 10, they're probably not going to call you back. So that's what we're playing with. Now, in that type of environment, it doesn't take much to really differentiate yourselves from other people in the market when our satisfaction level is so low. So I think what is happening is expectations are getting much higher, because when we compare outside of our own industries, you know, when you're buying any service now, whether you're buying fast delivery, or you're buying something furniture that needs to be delivered to your home, if you think, and you've used Uber, if you think of how Uber works, you're going to be comparing your Uber experience with the way in which the furniture store delivers your furniture, and it's not going to be acceptable anymore. So it's really important, I think, for us to be satisfied. We're constantly looking for more. We're constantly expecting not to be surprised by anything, because we've got such a low expectation. So I think if we're going to talk versus delighted, what that shift will be in the future, I think the delighted is when you get something that you at least expect to get. So when you feel valued and you feel cared for, then I think you're going to be able to move from satisfied to be really delighted, because we so seldom expect to get any feedback or any expectation around us being cared for. So I think there's a great opportunity there, and so therefore, the more things become high tech, we've got to really, really make sure that they also remain high touch.
My next question is if you're advising a business on how to future-proof themselves, where do they need to focus?
Where do you start? Yeah, I always say in customer experience is a journey. It doesn't really matter where you start, just start. Because it's about starting and getting things to move forward and then helping join the dots. So if I was advising a business on how to future-proof themselves at the moment, I think that the 5 sort of key areas or 6 key areas I'd like businesses to really focus on is businesses look inside a hell of a lot. They don't, even though they say they're looking outside, they don't really well. So I'd say benchmark. Now, what do I mean by that? Don't go and say, if I'm a bank, I'm going to benchmark with a bank. Go and see where your consumers of a bank also shop, and see what they like about those experiences, and start to emulate that. So if you think of what social media is giving us now as huge insights, if you think of what the eyes and ears are of your employees today and what they're seeing works, what doesn't work all the time at every single touch point, whether you're in the accounts department, non-consumer focused, or at the till. It's all about rational and emotional content. It's all about how does the system work, how does the process work, what should happen, and the other side is how do I feel about it? How do I feel delivering it, or how do I feel this? So I think you've got to measure and benchmark that all the time. The other bit of advice to future-proof yourself is I think it's really, we're seeing a fantastic trend in service design. You know, how do you start to use multiple different people to help you really super test your products, super test your processes, break them, rebuild them, all in the safety of a safe environment, and get to a prototype really quickly. So I think using service design approach of being tested, breaking it, testing it, but using multiple people to help you, that customers, staff, friends of staff, you get magic coming out of that. And I think to future-proof ourselves, we're going to have to be far faster at rapidly prototyping, fixing things that go wrong very quickly. We want to stay ahead of the game. I think the third thing I'd say to future-proof the business is, and I'm not going to bring brownie points here from the IT guys in the room, but you've got to choose a very robust IT platform, because we shouldn't just spend as we are trying to integrate stuff which can now just be provided as a service. So if you have the right level of APIs plugged in, you must match any data to anything within the organization. So we should be spending more time analyzing the data, socializing the data to different parts of the organization, socializing customer insights to different parts of the organization, rather than spending tons of time waiting for the next major IT integration project, by which stage our customers have moved on again. So find a platform, any platform, and make sure that that's robust enough to plug your stuff into. And I think the last three areas really relate to how we're going to really engage employees. You know, how do we choose employees? Because actually employees choose us these days. We don't choose them. They decide who they want to work for because they're very values driven. So if you think you're out there choosing people to work for you, they're probably checking social media to see what sucks, what works in the companies, and they're choosing you. So we've got to choose employees, I think, for attitude, and then really train them for the skills. So if they've got the right attitude, you can train any skills in.
Yeah.
We don't have to be getting the best hoteliers to run hotels. We've got to get the people with the best attitude and train them to be hoteliers. The millennial workers, I think, and I keep on bringing the millennials up because I just think it's such a wonderful mindset. These are people who've grown up with technology, they've grown up with very specific values. Remember, the banks don't work for them. Religion doesn't work for them. Probably their parents don't work for them.
School doesn't work for them.
School definitely doesn't work for them. So, your tribe, your best mates are the people that may share your same interests all across the world. You've never met them.
Yeah.
But you're great mates. So I think the millennial workforce is going to really require a very different type of leadership. And if we take our lesson from social media, then I think inspirational leaders who create followers are the guys who are going to win. So it's no longer about my position in the company or the hierarchy or whether I'm a boss or not. You are only a leader because you have followers. So like social media, how do you create followers? Because millennials are worse than 3-year-olds because they ask why a hell of a lot more. And if you can't give them a logical answer as to why you should do something, give them context, they won't know how to deliver.
Yeah. Now I know you've got some strong views on loyalty. Would you like to share some of that with us?
Would you like me to remain polite? Well, let's put it in two ways. I don't think that our personal quest for loyalty is going to change much into the future. And that's being, valued and having a sense of intimacy and a sense of trust. I don't think our personal quest for loyalty is going to change. But I think the way that organizations have abominated loyalty, when basically you become a hostage of somebody's miles or their points, and actually it's just a transactional thing. I would go as far now as saying there is no such thing as loyalty. So if you really want to make a difference in an organization, don't give somebody a loyalty card and say, therefore, we've both got a stamp, to work with each other.
Yeah.
I see it more, and this might be the controversial side. So first of all, I don't think there's any loyalty, especially in a corporate sense, because corporations exploiting as much as they can, but not showing equal value to customer. It might be a bit harsh, but I think in reality, we feel that. I think the way to view loyalty, it should be more like a flirtation or an affair. We've got to become mutually liked by each other and keep it alive by constantly doing things that keep us engaged. If that happens, then you're probably going to keep our business. And if you constantly do stuff for me when I'm least stuff for me, I'm going to stay really a real fan of the brand. So I think it's loyalty for me now is more about the emotional side again. It's more about how do I feel recognized? How do I feel listened to? How do I feel valued and cared for, especially when things go wrong? And perhaps I can just pull up a bit of research in this context, because there was a nice piece of work done by Amex. There was a piece of Amex in 2013, 2014, and it said 4% increase over those 2 years in consumers switching brands compared to the year before. So the trend is that people move brands quite quickly.
Yeah.
82% of those people who switched said that their brand could have stopped them by enticing them back. That's a phenomenal number. If you think of, by just having a call out to say, if we see your pattern has changed, what back? 82% of people said they switched brands that could have stopped them from churning. That is a huge indictment, and I think it's a really fantastic opportunity for companies to believe in advocacy and some form of support from their customer base to really exploit going forward.
Yeah, and I think the cop-out that companies use today, Craig, is they don't have the data, so they don't even know when I'm trying to leave them. And the second thing is they don't really care. And I think even the companies who pretend to care about me leaving will be the ones that I listen to, and I think it goes back to your point around authenticity. You know, I know the word is kind of overused, but it's really kind of getting back to the basics and understanding what I value, not what you value, and not enforcing me to navigate your complex loyalty system. So yeah, absolutely.
And then screw me on miles, and then not allow me to redeem when I need to redeem. So yeah, all in all, it just doesn't too well.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're getting towards the end of the interview. Maybe just a quick question around design rules. I think you know, so many companies don't innovate and don't design because they say they've got scarcity of resources, they don't have budget, don't have the right people. I mean, do you buy those excuses? Do you think design rules will change in future? Do you think there's excuses for people not to use design in great customer experience?
I think you have to design. Customer experience is about joining the dots. Every single touch point matters. How are you attract people to do business with you? How they leave you when they've stopped doing business with you? Everything is a deliberate design. Everything has to be designed. Customer experience is as much about the rule as it is about the emotion. It's as much about me as it is about how I feel about it when you're doing it to me. With that, I think design thinking, again, is becoming mainstream. Those companies, if you take an example like Apple, the excitement of taking an Apple product out of the box is not so much its beautiful design and the clarity of its packaging. Each step is like a two-step process, and you've got the thing out the box. You don't have to charge it. It's been thought through already. You don't have to load stuff. It's been done already. So if you think of the ease of doing business, the customer effort that has to go into doing business, I think those design rules are here to stay. And companies who really focus on intricately designing and fixing those touch points around emotion, around being faster and more agile, they're the companies that are going to win. Customer experience only works when it all works. So it doesn't help you to fix one part of the process and another part of the process is broken. So the first thing is it only works when it all works. Therefore, it has to be designed, it has to be very deliberate, and it has to be from the heart. You know, we've all seen organizations rebrand themselves, and I call it lipstick on the gorilla. You know, you just put more lipstick on the gorilla, and the inside is hunky dory. So it only